this player being Day'Ron Sharpe, a player the Lakers have been linked to, a guy they apparently tried to sign in free agency, though they obviously ended up with Jake Arabia, Deandre Ayton off the buyout market, and Marcus Smart. But if they could get him, I definitely think they would be interested. Maybe a 3-team trade like Ayton going to Indiana once again, probably the only values him and would want him through a trade. Then with Benedict Mathurin instead going to the Brooklyn Nets, who probably would want him. A team that's in a rebuild and are trying to gather young talent, I think that would be a pretty good fit. Then with Day'Ron Sharpe going to the Lakers, maybe not the best center in the world, but a guy that could definitely be a good fit for the long term and the short term with their team. I've talked about him before. I kind of resemble him to a mini Andre Drummond. You know, not quite as big compared to Drummond, but not too far off from him. Day'Ron Sharpe being 6'10", 265 pounds, with a 7-foot plus wingspan. And yes, he does reflect the rebounding ability with Andre Drummond. Not quite up to Drummond, but not too far away from him. This season, for example, grabbing 5.9 rebounds in under 18 minutes per game, translating to over 12 of them per 36 minutes. On his career, grabbing nearly 14 per 36 minutes. Not only that, but is a big physical presence near the rim, definitely knows how to take up space, is incredibly tough to move around the rim, is a very physical screener on the perimeter. You know, he's a guy that wouldn't be a terrible fit, only is 24 years old to go along with it, just got a new contract in free agency, therefore he is not a restricted free agent, not a expiring contract, and does have a decent contract that would fit pretty well into their payroll. I think this could be a legitimate option for them that can actually work pretty well for all three parties, benefiting the Nets in their rebuild, benefiting the Pacers with the guy they wanted to get for a couple of years now. Hopefully they would still want him. Then the Lakers getting Sharpe, a younger center option that hopefully would be a better fit, and a guy that they themselves have tried to get for over a year now at this point too. I think it would make sense for all three parties. And again, I think that would probably be the most likely or probably the most realistic trade with a Deandre Ayton trade partner. That being the Indiana Pacers, a team that has tried to get him, probably would still have some minor interest in him, and would probably be one of, if not the only team that would value him through a trade. So that would definitely be trade partner number 1, and the very first team that I would call up if I'm trying to trade Ayton, and if I'm probably going to get anything of value in return for him through a trade. But if not the Indiana Pacers, and if not trying to trade with them, then we're probably looking at trading Ayton as simply an expiring contract. Not getting anything of noteworthy value in return for him, probably not finding a team that wants him through a trade, or would value him very highly through a trade. At that point, we're simply using his contract to make the money work through a trade. Which is not exactly ideal, but then again, he does have an $8.1 million salary. I guess you could make a trade work with that. You could combine him with guys like Kleba, Vincent, maybe Hachimura, and or Dalton Connect to make a bigger trade. I guess it could be an option for them. Not in regard to talent or skill set, but mainly in regard to trade value. And for an example, I'd point to a team like the Bulls, yet another team entering a rebuild, a team that's one of, if not the biggest seller on the trade market, according to one report from Brett Cycle, maybe going after a young backup center on their team that could offer a bit more in a bigger role. That player being Jalen Smith. This season averaging roughly 17 minutes per game, averaging 9 points per game in that time frame, over 6 rebounds per game, translating to 13 of them per 36 minutes, very impressive. Not only that, but blocking nearly 2 shots per 36 minutes, great rebounder, good rim protector, not to mention the cherry on top here, being the fact that he's a floor spacer both vertically and horizontally, meaning both vertically at the rim, he can be a lob threat, then horizontally from the 3-point line too. This season knocking down 34.5% of his 3-point shots. Not incredible, but pretty good for a big, not to mention the fact that he takes nearly 4 of them in only 17 minutes per game. Per 36 minutes, nearly 8 of them, and that's incredibly high volume for a hybrid 4-5. Then the fact that yes, he can play at the 4 if needed and depending on the matchup, but is more of a center. A little bit undersized at roughly 6'9" and only weighing about 220 pounds, but he's shown the ability to be a great rebounder, is very physical around the rim, is a good rim protector, is a lob threat, does have great length around the rim. Again, he's proven the ability to play at both the 4 and the 5. And I think that could be an advantage for a team like the Lakers who do try to be a bit more versatile offensively. Would like Ayton to be able to shoot from 3, but he simply can't. With Jalen Smith, they would get that ability, would get floor spacing ability at the 3-point line, defensively wouldn't lose much of anything with him compared to Deandre Ayton, then rebounding wise would be the same if not better. I'd like the idea of trading for Jalen Smith. And the fact they can do it by probably trading Ayton for him, then with maybe a future first round draft pick swap at the absolute most, maybe a second round draft pick. Who knows, we are trading with the Bulls here, who are not a particularly very smart team lately, don't make many great trades, so maybe we might be able to fleece them a bit through a trade. Regardless though, I would like the idea of Jalen Smith. I think in spite of him not being as well known and, the fact that many might point to Vucevic over him, simply by name and him being more well known is not a good idea in my opinion. I think Jalen Smith would be the much better trade target, would cost significantly less compared to a guy like Nick Claxton, or compared to a guy like Daniel Gafford for example, who I don't think is a realistic option, not only in regard to price, but then trading with the Dallas Mavericks. For a lesser and more cost-effective trade option, I'd point to a guy like Jalen Smith. Overall here though, I think it's a very limited trade market for Deandre Ayton. If they're trying to trade him directly, if they're trying to find actual trade value for him, I think it's a very small market for him. Again, pointing to mainly the Indiana Pacers here, maybe a team like the Brooklyn Nets. Apart from that, I point to him as more of an expiring contract, rather than a true trade asset that could get them value in return. But those are only my thoughts, I'd love to hear your thoughts about it. How do you feel about the Deandre Ayton trade market, if the Lakers would in fact go that route, if they can't find common ground with him and get him back to where he once was earlier this season? How do you feel about trading him, and who would you then try to trade him for, and trade him to? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. But I think that'll pretty much do it for this one, and if you enjoyed the video, then I'll greatly appreciate it if you dropped a like, subscribe to the channel if you have not already, and hit that notification bell to never miss out when I upload a video. But as always, thank you for watching, and have a great day or night.